Hey guys, today on JD Cars we're going to be swapping out these dull stock halogen headlights and fog lights for some Suparee 7-inch halo headlights with LED bulbs and RGB halo rings, which are controlled wirelessly from your iPhone or Android smartphone. So first and foremost, let's see what we receive in the box here. You just get a blank black box from Suparee here. Fairly nice packaging. Got a nice thick piece of styrofoam protecting our headlights. We've got some pairing instructions for the app, as well as some instructions on how to operate the lights themselves. We have a customer assistance card from Suparee. And then we have the headlights and fog lights themselves. They look really nice from what I can see here. Oh yeah. I'm gonna leave this protective plastic on until we have them installed just to prevent any scratches. Let's pull them out of the packaging here. Oh yeah. This has some really nice weight to it. As you can see, it has a very large metal heatsink on the back, watertight connections with a rubber grommet, sealed casing all the way around, heat shrinked connections here. All looks very nice to me. Check out one of the fog lights as well. So when pulling out one of our fog lights here, I noticed that we have two bare wires, which means that this is likely a different style connector from our stock fog light connector, meaning that we'll have to chop off our existing fog light connection and then splice this in to the existing wires. Like the headlight, this does have a metal heatsink on the back, a rubber grommet to ensure a watertight seal. Overall, the build quality is pretty solid. And last but not least, we have the control module and wiring. So I presume that these are the headlight adapters. Both connectors are 3 pins, but as you can see, they're different styles. These seem to be nicely constructed adapters. We then have our main control box, which is a little bit smaller than a credit card, as you can see here. And then we have our wiring to go to each of the lights. Essentially, this is gonna be our main base. Our red wire is gonna plug into the main base, and then there are 4 leads that run off of this wire, which go to each headlight and each fog light, which means the entire system is going to be in sync, which is one of the reasons I chose this kit over other Amazon headlight kits. I do want to explain another reason I selected these Suparee headlights over other models, which is the low beam design. So according to their Amazon page, the low beam consists of this top projector bulb here. Now the older version headlights the older style headlights consisted of 3 light sources, the main top projector, and then the 2 on the side. This updated Suparee version has not 3 but 5 light sources for the low beam. And as you can see, if you take a closer look here, they're actually staggered at different angles, which gives you a much wider coverage on the road and ultimately better lighting. So we'll begin by popping the hood here. We'll begin by removing the front grille here. In order to do so, we need to remove 6 of these plastic grommets located on the top of the grille. You want a basic flathead screwdriver and a plastic pry tool to remove this grommet. We'll insert our flathead in the top part of the grommet, pop it up like so. You can use our plastic pry tool to pop it up the remainder of the way, and then insert it in the base of the grommet and pull it out like so. After removing these grommets, we give the front grille a nice little tug here, which will release it, but don't try to pull it off just yet. We do have to disconnect our turn signal cables. Simply take a flathead or your fingers and release this red safety latch, like so, which will then allow you to press down on this black tab, which will release the connector from the bulb. We can now use a T15 Torx bit to remove 4 T15 screws around the perimeter of the headlight here. As you can see, this will release the headlight because removing those 4 screws releases this metal retaining band, which is responsible for holding the headlight in place. Hold on to this because we'll be reusing it. Similar to before, use a flathead screwdriver or your finger to release this red safety latch. Then press down on the tab and disconnect the connector. At this point, we could install our new headlights, but it wouldn't do us any good because we do not yet have the connection for our RGB halo lights. So the next logical step here is to install our control box and run the 4 wires for all 4 of our RGB halo rings. Now for our power source, most people are going to want a switched power source. That power source is only active when the car's key is turned in the on ignition position. So we're going to come over to the fuse box here, pop these 2 tabs to open it, and you'll now want to select a switched fuse. I've decided to select the M6 fuse, which is for the driver's side cigarette lighter, which, as you probably know, is turned off when the car is off, which is perfect. Now the M6 fuse is located over on the right here. It's this yellow 20 amp fuse. You can grab our little fuse removal tool here. We'll stick it over the M6 fuse, pull it out like so. Now this M6 fuse that we removed is a 20 amp fuse. However, we are going to be adding on these halo lights, which is going to be drawing a little bit more power, obviously. So I'm going to be upping my fuse to a 25 amp fuse. Now our control box is going to be located in this vicinity here, which leaves us a pretty straight shot to the negative battery cable to ground it. You could also ground it on the body here, but I prefer just to go directly to the battery. But having it in this location means that our cable is going to have some extra distance to run around the control box and into our fuse. So I've stripped back the positive wire bit. I have an extra piece of wire here. I'm going to strip it back and I'm going to join the 2 wires with a butt splice connector. This is now all ready to go. One thing I do need to do though is use this rounded file and make a slight indent in the fuse box casing here to allow the wire to run out. It really doesn't have to be too deep because we don't want to disturb the watertight seal. We'll now take the wire and we'll wrap it around one of the blades of the fuse, and we'll wrap it around one of the blades of the fuse that we'll be inserting into that M6 slot. As you can see here, the wire is securely wrapped around the blade of the fuse. Now we can insert it into the fuse box. So as you can see here, I have our positive wire very snugly fit into the fuse here. It's not going anywhere. So we can now run it through that little indent that I made with the file. As you can see, it's a nice flush fit. As you can see, it's a nice flush fit there. Make sure that stays positioned where it needs to. I had to put the camera down to do this with 2 hands, but we want to make sure that this cable is routed properly in the filed out area. Make sure that it runs properly out of the fuse box. So as you can see, this gives us plenty of slack to mount our control box wherever we want, and it also to have the negative wire line up with the negative terminal of the battery here. I've checked out numerous different mounting options for the control box, and I found right here this plastic wall is a perfect location to mount the control box. The only problem, of course, is how do you get a drill in here? So it's easy enough actually to remove the battery on the Wrangler. We just have these 2 10mm nuts on the leads, of course, and then hidden down on the left side of the battery here is a 10mm bolt, which holds that plastic retaining piece. And once removed, you can easily slide the battery towards the side of the car and lift it up and out of the engine bay. As you can see, removing the battery gives us plenty of room here to work with to screw that control box into this plastic wall. Now, before we do so, there is a QR code on the control box, as you can see here. I highly recommend downloading a QR app before mounting up the control box, because once we put it in there, we won't be able to scan it. So download a basic QR code reader. It should reroute us to the App Store. We'll open that. And yeah, very unlikely that you'll find the app just by typing in the name, because it's some Chinese or Japanese character. So just go ahead and download the app here. So we'll get that all downloaded, so it's all ready to go once we have this installed. So I've got 2 self-tapping screws in the control box, as you can see here. I'm just gonna mount it up right here on this plastic wall. I've taken a look behind here and verified that there aren't any wires in the way, so we're all good to go ahead and mount this right here on the plastic wall. Now that we've got the control box mounted up here, we're gonna reinstall the battery. So we're just gonna slide into place under this retaining edge here. We're gonna reinsert our retaining block and tighten down the 10mm bolt and reinstall the negative and positive leads. Just a quick note, I found that lifting up and repositioning this pump here makes it a lot easier to get the battery in there. So sort of hook it around the fuse box here. Just careful not to break any of the hoses. That'll give you a little extra room here to maneuver the battery into place. Now before we torque down our negative lead here, we do want to take care of grounding our control box. I'll be crimping on this open-ended crimp to our negative control box wire. I'll then be slipping it in right here under this nut on the negative lead, and we'll tighten it down to give ourselves a nice solid ground for the control box. I'm really happy with how clean this setup is so far. So we have the control box mounted up very securely here. We have our control box power wires. Our negative wire goes right to the battery lead. Positive goes into the control box. As you can see, we don't have any major slack here. I am gonna zip tie control box wire to this wire loom and the positive wire to this wire loom as well, just to make sure they don't shift around and these crimps don't get damaged. Also going to apply some Lexel, which is some waterproof clear silicone. I'm going to apply that to the top edge of the control box, just in case this were to crack open. I don't want any water getting in there, so I'm just going to prevent any water damage using some Lexel. Now with our control box fully wired in, it's time to run our 4-way splitter from the control box to each of the light locations. I am curious if there are different lengths in the cables, because obviously the cable has to go farther to get to the fog lights, so I'm gonna unravel them and find out here. Alright, so just right away after unraveling it a little bit, it's pretty obvious that they're all the same length, meaning that we're gonna have quite a bit of excess in the headlights, especially the front right one, just because it's so close to the control box, but that's not a problem. We'll just zip tie the excess wire. Basically the process here, we're gonna connect the red connector to the control box. Just grab the control box wire, match up the little keyed notch on the connector, plug it in, and screw on the watertight collar. As you can see, this wire goes to a 4-way splitter here, at which point the signal separates into 4 different wires, all of equal length. They have a similar style connector here, which is going to plug into the headlights and fog lights, and ultimately this will control our RGB halo rings. So I'm not going to film the entire process of routing the wires. It's pretty straightforward and that would just be boring to watch. So definitely not worth filming the entire process of zip tying this down and routing it, but I am going to give you a little update on how I'm routing it here. The first wire going to the passenger side headlight, I didn't even need any of the wire. I just zip tied it all up right here, and as you can see, it comes out right in the headlight socket. I ran the second wire straight down by the side of the radiator, and it comes out just behind the front bumper. And here's how I'm doing that. I'm using a cable snake that I fed up from under the car, and I just laid a shop light where I wanted the cable snake to come up so I could see that easily from under the car. Fed it up here. I'm just gonna use some Gorilla Tape to tape one of these wires on, pull it down through, and we'll be all set for both of the fog lights here. And then very straightforward for the driver's side headlight here, just gonna zip tie up the excess and secure it somewhere, maybe even right here on this piece of plastic, and have the lead go right down to the headlight. All right, at this point we are fully wired up. Got all of our connections here for both the headlights and both the fog lights. Obviously we still have to deal with the slack, but I won't zip tie that up until we have wires actually connected to the fog lights. Now I believe it is possible to remove the fog lights with the bumper installed, but it is extremely tight in there and it's nearly impossible to show you. So I'm going to throw the Jeep up on the MaxTrax lift here, just to make my life a little easier, both removing this and showing you the process of doing so. So first and foremost, we need to remove this plastic air dam. Similar to the grill, we're gonna have to remove several plastic grommets like this. I prefer to use a plastic pry tool such as this one. Simply insert the pry tool like so. And these ones may be a little more stubborn. You may have to grab some channel locks like these and pull the grommet out like so. You've got 4 of these across the front part of this plastic piece here. Removing those 4 plastic grommets will release this partially. Then you've got these 2 rubber straps on either side, and they too have the same style grommet up on the top back portion of the strap. I can't really show you on camera, but get in there with a flathead and or pry tool, pop out that grommet, and this entire plastic piece will be released. Also, just a quick note here, I highly recommend picking up one of these kits off Amazon. You get over 400 grommets here. As you can see, they include a key, so you know exactly what each grommet is for. They include a bunch of plastic pry tools as well as this metal heavy duty pry tool. And last but not least, some grommet zip ties. So I picked up this kit off Amazon. I think it was like 25 bucks. Definitely well worth the money. So as always, I'll leave a link for this down below. It's now time to remove the bumper itself. The bumper is retained by 8 18mm nuts, 2 located here, 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 and here. As you can see here, 2 of them just to the right of the fog light there. I'm first gonna come in with a breaker bar and an 18mm deep well socket to break the nuts loose, and then I'll come back with a more basic ratchet to more quickly remove the nuts. Now, when pulling off the 18mm nuts, you're gonna run into some unavoidable difficulty of a pump located on the driver's side here. So do yourself a favor, pull out the 2 grommets on this plastic air dam piece, remove it, set it aside with your other plastic piece, and this will allow you much better access to get these 2 18mm nuts, particularly the top one here, as it's located directly across from the pump here. I've tilted the bumper forward a bit here just to show you this a little more easily. So as you can see, our fog lights have a simple quick disconnect connector. Just gonna press in on the tab and pull it off to release it. Same on the other side here. And then lastly, the fog light wire loom is affixed to the bumper here. So I recommend using a plastic pry tool to pop these out. After disconnecting your fog lights and removing the wire loom, you can then remove the bumper like so. At this point, swapping out the fog light is pretty straightforward, and it takes far less time than actually removing the bumper, which is kind of annoying, but we just have 4 Phillips head screws around the outside of the fog light, so we'll remove those. After doing so, you can pull out the fog light. When installing our new Suparee projector fog light here, we want the DOT text to be on the top of the bumper, so we'll drop it in. And then simple enough, we'll just resecure it with the 4 stock Phillips head screws. Now you'll probably notice this is a different style connector from the factory style connector, and we have these 2 bare wires, as I said at the beginning of the video. So we are going to want to pull off this end of the connector with the bare wires, because we'll need to splice this into the existing car wires using some butt splice connectors. Before we reinstall the bumper, we're going to deal with installing those new connectors. So we're going to pull back the casing on the fog light connector to expose the wires. It's advisable to chop the wire in the middle if you were to want to reinstall the stock connector. So chop this wire right here. Do the same with the negative. So I'm going to save this connector if for some reason I ever wanted to reinstall the stock fog lights. So we'll strip back these wires just a little bit here. Grab our new connector that comes with our new fog light, a crimp tool, and 2 butt splice connectors. So before we crimp it, we want to slide on some heat shrink tubing, because we do want to make sure that this is waterproof, because it'll more than likely get submerged when we go off-roading. So we'll slide our heat shrink right over the wires here, grab our butt splice connector, and we'll connect black to black and red to white. Once these are crimped up, we can slide the heat shrink tubing over the crimp. We'll now grab our heat gun and we'll shrink the tubing around the wires. After heat shrinking our wires here, we can then slip this cover back over the wire, and we're now all good to go to plug in our new fog lights. We're just going to repeat the identical process on the driver's side here, butt splicing on our new connector, heat shrinking the connections, and then reinstalling the cover. One last thing we should do before reinstalling the bumper is taking care of our fog light halo wires. So as you can see, they're fairly close by here. We just need to zip tie them along the existing fog light wire to the same location as the fog light connector itself. So here's my completed wiring setup. As you can see, I zip tied the cables to this casing here, brought it out, zip tied up the excess, and I put these two connectors at the same length. Same thing on the other side here. And of course, we have our wires for both the headlight halos as well. At this point, we can now reinstall the bumper by installing our 4 metal plates that act as washers and our 8 18mm nuts that go on the back side of the bumper. Alright, front bumper is completely installed along with the fog lights, which are all hooked up and ready to go. So I'm going to lower the Jeep down and we'll get those new headlights installed. We'll reinstall the grille and then we'll get to fire these things up and see what they look like. Now for probably the most exciting part, we get to install the new headlights. As you can see, I have the adapter hooked up to the headlight here, allowing us to connect the headlight with the factory connector. Simply rest the headlight right here, connect the headlight to the car, press in that safety latch to lock the connector in. And we can also hook up the RGB halo connector as well. We can now tuck these wires back behind the headlight, install the headlight itself, grab our metal retaining ring, put it around the outside of the headlight like so, and we'll reinstall our 4 T15 Torx screws. This new headlight is completely installed now. We're going to repeat the same process over on the passenger side. With both new headlights installed, we can reinstall the grille. So we just need to remember to reconnect our turn signal connectors and install the 6 plastic grommets on the top of the grille here. Alright, I'm going to turn off the lights here, go key in the ignition, and this thing should fire up. We'll have to connect the phone to the app obviously, but let's see what these things look like. Oh man, that looks sweet. Turn down the exposure here, hopefully that'll help. But these halo rings look awesome. So here's the car with just the halos, as you can see. I'm gonna connect the phone to the module now so we can hook it up, so we can change the color and see the functionality of the app. I'm gonna click scan. We're scanning for the module at this point here. BLE light, and check that. Go back. As you can see, we have the Bluetooth light here. We can change the color. Oh yeah, there we go. Damn, the red looks crazy. So as you can see, we can adjust the brightness here, which is pretty cool. Of course, the color, we have the entire rainbow wheel here. Turn them on and off via the app. There are different modes. They're kind of strange, to be honest. The only real functional one is party mode, which switches through the colors, as you can see here. The colorful mode just switches and jumps from one color to the next. The other ones are kind of strange. They're just colors, they don't really do anything. And it's kind of difficult to get white on this color wheel. So what I did is I took a picture of one of my ceiling lights, which is bright white, and just click on that and the lights will switch to white. They are ever so slightly blue, but it's hardly noticeable. I think they look great, and I think it's really cool that you can change the color of them right from the app. I am curious if we turn off the car, if the app will auto reconnect. So I'm gonna turn off the car. We'll see if the color is the same when I turn on the car again, and we'll see if it automatically connects to my phone. Okay, sweet. So it completely remembered my color, and I didn't have to do anything. I wasn't even running the app actually. I was just on my home screen when I turned off the car and turned it back on. And when I came back to the app here, it was already reconnected, which is excellent. It's sort of difficult to see on my wall here, but the right headlight does seem to be slightly higher than the left here. So I'm gonna show you quickly how to adjust the angle of your headlight. You'll need to pop off the front grille again. So simply pull out the 6 plastic grommets on top and pull off your front grille. So I turned the Jeep around here, and as you can see on my garage door, the right headlight is slightly higher than the left one. So now with the grille removed, on either headlight you're gonna have a T15 adjustment screw right here. When I insert my driver and turn it to the left, it will lower the headlight. As you can see, this will slowly lower the headlight here. So that looks to be roughly level. Let's take a look at it from back here. Yeah, that looks good. I'm gonna lower this one just a little bit as well. All right, so the headlights are leveled. As you can see, just roughly taking a look at it here, they are pointed slightly downwards, which is just what we want. We don't want them to be leveled out because then we'll just be blinding people on the road. So they look to be at an appropriate level. I'm gonna go take them out for a quick test drive, see how they are on the road. As you can see, headlights are pretty bright here. Obviously we should have the high beams on in this background, so kick on the high beams. Definitely a huge improvement over the stock headlights. This is definitely a huge update in technology in terms of switching over to LED bulbs. So it does give the car a more updated and refreshed look. Also, just a quick announcement, if you're interested in winning a pair of the VIP Motos OLED sequential taillights, as seen in last week's video, be sure to share this video with 3 people you think would enjoy it. Subscribe down below if you've yet to do so, and comment down below what vehicle you'd like to put these lights on. So far, I'm very satisfied with the Suparee 7-inch halo and fog light halo headlight package. The installation does take a little bit longer to do it right and to do a clean install, but it's definitely worth it. The LED headlights alone are a huge upgrade, and the RGB halo rings are just a really cool feature to have. Other than that, that's gonna wrap up this video. Please leave a like below. Please subscribe if you've yet to do so, and leave any future video suggestions down below in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time on JD Cars.